welcome back to Spiro Avenue. Happy to have you. One of my favorite guests in studio, Tony Paul. We'll get to him in a second. But first, we do have to quickly give a little bit of love to the best wine company in the world, Virgil's Vineyard, who makes my favorite wine on the planet. Right over my shoulder here, the Smuggler's Son. Highly recommend it. It has been our favorite wine in this household for years before they were ever a sponsor. But they are a sponsor, now we love them even more. We highly recommend you check them out at virgilsvineyard.com. The Smuggler's Son in particular is fantastic. And if you feel like saving a little bit of money, use my last name, Spiro, S-P-I-R-O, for a 10% discount. They are awesome. It is a company that's obviously, they're in Napa. They're not making this wine in Detroit. But the couple's from Detroit, the Kipper family that owns this vineyard out in Napa. So check them out, virgilsvineyard.com. Highly recommend. You will not be disappointed. And you will also similarly not be disappointed with the guest across from me tonight because he's one of the best. I have ranked him in the top 3 to 5 journalists working in the state of Michigan today. A now 3-time guest, 2 times in person on the Spiro Avenue show. This is Tony Paul from the Detroit News. Welcome back.
It's good to be back. I love what you've done with the place.
I heard that you did not find your first visit overly impressive, that there were too many wires and it was offensive to your senses.
I don't know about that.
So we stepped our game up a little bit for you. We made it nice and tidy because I have to impress you, Tony. It's very important.
Yes, I'm sure it is. It looks great.
Oh, I appreciate it. So, and you're a Spartan like me. Mm-hmm. So even though you're accused of hating our alma mater because you reported court findings and filings, and
Yeah, I hate Michigan and Michigan State. It depends who you ask.
Yeah, we were talking right before the show that I've been accused of being like a liberal fascist honk and like a maggot, like Donald Trump, red hat wearing fascist as well. So yeah, people don't know what they're talking about, but you certainly do. You're one of the few people in this state that does know what they're talking about, and particularly with our topic tonight, I have turned my head completely away. I've averted my eyes from the Detroit Tigers. Too much other stuff going on. Michigan State basketball is a mess. Michigan State football was mostly a mess, but had 2 highs. You got the Pistons, you got the Red Wings for whatever they are. I haven't even looked at the Tigers in a while, but I've started to pivot back. We're on the doorstep. We're a couple weeks away from pitchers and catchers. This is when it starts to get exciting. What a perfect time to have you back. The Tigers are in a state of transition. Most people that have followed this team for a long time know that this has not been the heyday. We're sort of at the low point in this period, this last half decade now. I'm wondering, this rebuild was launched in 2017, so we're several years removed from that. What is the state of the rebuild? How are things going there?
I don't know if they're going that great. It depends on your perspective of things. I like what they've done with the minor leagues. I still think there's a lot of talent there. I think if you saw Casey Mize and you saw Tariq Skubal come up, I think you have to like what you see. I know a lot of people were freaked out because Mize gave up some homers, and you look at his first 3-4 starts, the same thing as Justin Verlander when he started. You can see the stuff is there. So you have to be excited about that and the level of the other kids coming up. But the argument that I made going into the off season was, these guys are coming up, so now is the time to start pushing the envelope with the filling in the holes with your free agents, with your positions that you need some help. And I've been absolutely disappointed with what shape the rebuild has taken this off season, in that I don't think it's taken any shape at all. I think that they've done nothing, and I think this was the perfect time to strike. So I think they have the pieces, but they haven't been as proactive as I would like to see them in filling in the holes and the gaps around, because I think that this team, with some good free agent signings, some good moves, I think this team could be in contention in 2022. Now I don't believe that. I think this was a wasted off season, especially because you have the COVID and everything, and so there's discounts to be had out there as well, and to kind of you got to bite the bullet now and spend money when you probably don't want to, but you're going to be saving in the long run. And I felt like this was a prime time for them to kind of be proactive, and they fell flat on their face. And so I'm not optimistic that they're going to contend in 2022. And so, beyond that, I mean, who knows? I mean, I try to look a year down the road. I don't think anyone can look more than a year and say they absolutely know what's going to happen. You can look a year down the road, and I don't like the idea of them contending in 2022.
And I think we're in perfect lockstep. And I'll throw this one caveat out there that this was the offseason that I expected some serious moves to be made. Now, you got to keep in mind, we are now in 2021. The initial overtures, promises, assurances, hints, whatever you want to call them, of don't worry, we're going into a rebuild, but at the end of this race, pretty soon, just wait a few years, we're going to spend. We're now going on 4 years removed from those initial statements and sort of suppositions. And they're still doing the same stuff they were doing 2 years ago. You're still seeing sort of the discount signings, the taking a flyer on a guy trying to be the fifth starter. Derek Holland, who's been bad for like 4 years. It's kind of like the Tyson Ross signing 2.0, or we're up to maybe the 5.0 now of that type of signing. They're doing the same exact kind of stuff, bargain hunting, bargain shopping, that they were 3 or 4 years ago. There is no distinction between what they're doing now from what they were doing 2 or 3 years ago. So where's the progress? And the progress they're credited for is the farm system, which is the highest it's been in my lifetime.
Sure.
But I've been of the contention that they don't really get credit for that, because you could be, like, my wife knows very little about baseball. If I just handed her the keys to the franchise and said, here you go, honey, love you, do your worst, she probably would do about the same thing. She'd finish bottom 3 to 5 for 5 years in a row, and then pick guys in the top 5. And now all of a sudden you're the darlings of Baseball America because, they got 5 prospects in the top 100. Well, if you're picking in the top 5.
Well, top 35. But
top 35. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Top 35.
So that's a big difference too.
No, you're right.
I get what you're saying about the draft. Anyone could take Spencer Torkelson. Anybody could take Casey Mize. Right. I don't think everyone would have taken Tariq. would have landed Tariq Skubal.
Skubal's the exception.
He's an outlier there. But you're right. And with any farm system, it's all a guessing game until they get there. I mean, you don't know. You could have. You could say all you want about this great farm system. Tigers supposedly had this great farm system in the early 90s too, and that didn't exactly pan out either. So until they get there, but that's, again, I think they're okay there. And I think they've done fine. Where they haven't done fine is they haven't turned anybody that they traded to start this rebuild into anything significant as far as prospects. I mean, you got Candelario, and he's fine. Whatever, but I mean, you look at for the JV trade was a bust. I mean, Franklin Perez, is as fragile as can be. We don't know if he's ever going to start for the Tigers or pitch for the Tigers, and those are big mistakes they made, and I think that hindered the rebuild. The drafting, I agree with you to a certain extent. Now we'll see what happens with the later drafts. They supposedly got an amazing haul in this shortened 5-round draft this year. We'll see what happens with that, But I agree. For the most part, at the top of the draft, there weren't many decisions to be made, especially with Casey Mize and Spencer Torkelson.
No, I mean, yeah, and those are the two. I mean, they were the consensus top prospects. You were picking one, you took them, and it's easy to forget now. But even Matt Manning, who's highly regarded on draft boards, I'm like a total dork with the mock draft stuff, like to a personal fault, Tony.
A mock draft for baseball.
I'm one of the only ones. Like you could go.
We won't do it at the news. It was funny. Lynn Henning tried for decades to get the boss to let us do baseball mock. Let him do a baseball mock draft, and the boss is like, absolutely not. No one's going to read that garbage.
I would have been the one.
You would have been.
Yeah.
He would have been writing it for you. So Lynn should just come here and give it to you because he tried for decades to get because we do it obviously with basketball and football and all that, but the boss for years said, no, we're not doing a baseball.
He was probably right. I mean, as much as I love them, I identify that I'm a weirdo for liking baseball mock drafts. But yeah, I was talking about, prospects like a year in advance for the last 5 years. So yeah, I'm into that stuff. But the point I was going to make was Matt Manning going into that draft at the position the Tigers took him. That was about right too. That wasn't some like gem they uncovered either. So Skubal really is the only one. And it's like, congratulations. You've been making decisions for 5 years. You found one guy that's probably a value. That's not impressive. You made the great point of the real hindrance of the rebuild and the speed of it is that they had all these pieces, Verlander, Scherzer, Upton, JD. None of these guys were turned into anything. And you look at what the Yankees did with Aroldis Chapman, extreme example, but still, they rented Chapman to the Cubs for 2 months. It was like 50 days in 2016. They got Gleyber Torres, one of the best baseball players on the planet right now, a superstar 20-year-old, a little older now, but 20-year-old shortstop. They've done nothing. If you had even one or two pieces from those trades, now that farm system is overflowing, but you said it. Yeah. It doesn't mean anything anyway.
No, it doesn't. But I will say this: the Chapman in 2006, there was this cutoff in baseball, and it wasn't definitive. It wasn't an exact date, but where teams stopped unloading the farm system for rentals and for instant fixes. It's kind of shifted to teams aren't willing to do that anymore. That was kind of like the end of that, that with that haul that you're talking about. But absolutely, they should have gotten more for.
Can I get a functional major leaguer? I'm not asking for Gleyber Torres. I said that's an extreme example.
You got Candelario. I think he's fine.
Okay, Candelario. He's fine. He had a great 40 days.
But
that's wonderful.
But for Verlander, you haven't. I mean that's inexcusable. And they held Max, and they made some big mistakes, and they rushed the signing of or the trading of JD. I think I think they could have held back and gotten more for him, and that's where the mistakes have been made, grave mistakes, and the rebuild would have been a lot quicker had they hit on those. And I mean, these are superstar players that you didn't hit on, and that's a problem.
And the point is, you are in year 4, really year 5, going into of a rebuild, as far as I'm concerned.
I argue it actually started the year before and then Mike Ilitch changed his mind.
That makes the point even stronger. Yeah, but I mean, we're in at least year 5. Is that fair? I mean,
it's 5. It's 5 years. Some people would argue. There are certain people that would say it's 4, but it's 5 for sure. And I argue that it's even longer because I still believe that they let Max go and that was the start, and then Mike Ilitch just completely changed his mind and one more shot at it, and did the Zimmerman and Upton, and
he read his oncology report. I mean, that's not being macabre. I mean, that's actually what happened. Is that, he realized the writing was on the wall for his lifespan, unfortunately. And the point is, a monkey running this thing, a chimpanzee, a rat running this thing, could do no worse. And that's what's frustrating. You're in year 5. There's been nothing done that anybody that has access to MLB Trade Rumors annual mock draft couldn't have come up with. Okay, the team sucks. Oh, we'll take the top guy on the board. Mm-hmm. Oh, the team sucks again. We'll take the top guy on the board. That's the only progress. There's been little to no development in the mid rounds. They haven't hit on any trades, basically. I mean, if you want to say Candelario, I say the jury's still out on that. His overall body of work is poor. I'm not
putting him in the Hall of Fame. I'm just saying he's a serviceable. He's a legitimate starter. He could start on other teams. That's the point I was making.
Even that's debatable. This past year, very nice, but
there's 30 teams.
Body
could start somewhere.
Okay. The Marlins are dying to get their hands on him. The point is, in year 5, I want to see something more than accidental progress that anybody could come up with, and we have not seen that. I don't know what I want more really from this team, and I've had this discussion with Max Boltman from The Athletic regarding the Red Wings too. I kind of fluctuate, and I'm curious for your opinion. This team right now, 2021, are they better off organizationally playing meaningful baseball in September somehow? They're 5 games out of the wild card, not really in it, but they're kind of in it. Get these young guys up in meaningful moments. And then they end up picking 10th or 12th. Or are they better off stinking again and getting one more elite prospect in that top 2 to 4?
No, I think they'd probably, because their track record is, most teams' track record is better with the top pick than it would be with the 10th or 12th pick. So I think just from that standpoint, and especially the Tigers, I would say picking 1st and 2nd would be better for them than picking 10th or 11th, because I just don't see the track record with them picking down the board. So if they're not going to win this year, be bad. Get the best guy.
I tend to agree.
I mean, I think they're going to be in that position anyway. I don't see them contending into September unless, again, it's a 60-game season. I don't see them, which who knows if it will be. We don't even know when baseball's going to start. But I just think the track record would be better with the easy pick.
I actually like where they're at. I mean, obviously, I'd rather be picking 1st or 2nd, but they have the 3rd pick this year. And a lot can change between now and the draft. It's a few months away. but it is considered really a 3-ish player draft, but there's 2 pitchers that stand out above everybody else. And so you're going to get one of the best 2 pitchers, the consensus top 2 guys, or you're going to get the best hitter in the draft, or whomever you think is the best hitter in the draft. So I think they're in a good position now. I do think one more year of like, let's get, if you consider this draft and then the subsequent 2022 draft, give me 2 more blue chip prospects. And this brings us to our next point. I think they need that because I don't believe they are going to spend. And that's where my skepticism lies. Chris Ilitch has made multiple pledges over the past few years in interviews whenever he does pop up. It's not often. You've had multiple headlines locally, Ben, if you can throw those up. I mean, we just pulled a couple from like 2020, but we'll read this one first. This is from Detroit Free Press, your best friend, Carlos Monterez. Quote, Detroit Tigers owner Christopher Ilitch believes in process, will spend when the time is right. And then going to your publication, the Detroit News, that same year, 2020, if you can, there we go. This is our buddy Chris Bukowski. Quote, that day will come, and quote, Tigers Christopher Ilitch assures fans he's prepared to spend. And we pulled just a couple, but this stuff's been going on for half a decade now where don't worry, just everybody relax. I'm going to give you Wilson Ramos. I'm going to give you Tyson Ross. I'm going to give you all these, mediocre C- players. Just hang in there. Well, we're hanging, and we got nothing. But this brings me, before I ask you, you mentioned Lynn Henning earlier. He had a very interesting quote. Lynn Henning, you can dispute it if you want. I have it on decent authority that Lynn Henning has a good relationship with some of the people downtown at Comerica Park, and it is manifested over the years in articles where he says this is what they're thinking, and then it tends to come true. This was from his article yesterday. That's February 4th. Quote, you can expect to see legitimate baseball life, interest, enthusiasm, reasons to buy a Comerica Park ticket, etc., return in 2022. That's next year. It's a matter of young talent graduating to the big leagues and the inevitability of a box office free agent or 2 being signed during the coming offseason, which will happen. End quote. Emphasis all mine, but important emphasis. So let's break it down. He's saying that it's inevitable, his words, not mine, inevitable that a box office free agent or two will be signed this upcoming offseason. Not the one we're in, next one. I think he's pretty plugged in. I don't think he's pulling that out of his ass. He's saying not only that he thinks or they could or it might be time, it's inevitable. No, it's going to happen.
That's a definitive statement. And Lynn is plugged in with the higher ups in many of the teams, but particularly the Tigers. And,
yes.
And that's that's not an I think this is going to happen statement. It's very definitive. He's got more faith that that's going to happen than I do.
I'm with you.
I believe, and again, and I brought this up the last time, and then you talked to Chad about this as well. I believe, or about the whole District Detroit thing.
Chad Live and Good from Cranes, yeah,
right, which is the District Detroit promise. All we have to go on with Chris Ilitch, okay? He's been the de facto Tiger owner for six years or whatever it is. They won't even call him the owner. He's chairman and CEO or whatever.
He's the owner.
He's the owner of the team.
Yeah.
And we don't have any evidence to suggest that is going to happen. And the only thing that we have to go on is some big proclamation that he's made is the whole District Detroit, which was the promise, of this huge Renaissance neighborhood, several blocks downtown, anchored by Little Caesars Arena. And they were going to build this up into restaurants and shops and hotels and apartments or whatever in return for the tax subsidies.
Exactly.
And that has not happened. That has been a colossal lie. I mean, there's nothing else to call it. They have the arena, which the city helped pay for, which makes them money. That's all there is. I work downtown there all the time, and I love downtown. I think that downtown's great. But that area is not there. And that's the only big proclamation from Ilitch that we have to go on, and it hasn't come true. So that's why I'll remain skeptical that Chris Ilitch will spend when, quote, the time is right, whenever the hell that is, until it happens. And again, I made the argument that this offseason would have been a prime time to start that. And got laughed at by a lot of readers that thought, oh, they can't do it yet. And I'm like, why not? It takes multiple even if you have all the great prospects in the world, even if you have the core four like the Yankees have, it still takes pieces that you have to plug in from the free agency. If you look at the 2006 Tigers, that was, yes, it was Verlander and Zamaya, and it was Granderson and a lot of the young guys. It was also 3 off seasons of putting the pieces together in Pudge in 2004, in Maglio in 2005, Carlos Guillen, Kenny Rogers, Todd Jones. It was multiple off seasons. So if you're going to say that you want to contend next year, which they believe they can in 2022, then it had to start this off season to at least do something. And all due respect to the second baseman they re-signed tonight, Jonathan Scope, not the answer long-term probably. Robbie Grossman's not a long-term solution here. Wilson Ramos, same thing. It had to start. You had to start getting those, cornerstones, and they just don't have those.
And they have, and you made the perfect statement that if 2006 is the doppelganger for what we want the contention to look like, 03 worst team ever. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Mets were an expansion team. The 03 Tigers are the most
they were the way
disgraceful.
Worse.
I mean, it's an expansion team. It's the ultimate asterisk. The Tigers are the worst baseball team ever. That 03 team. 04, they bring in Pudge. They were like 25 games better. Mm-hmm. Still terrible. Mm-hmm. And then they signed Maglio Ordonez in 05. He was banged up for half the year, but he hit when he was on the field. They won like 5 or 7 more games, and then they popped. The young guys came up. It was like a perfect synergy. You laid it out. We're still like in that, not 03, but like 04 territory, but with no Pudge. But back to Lynn Henning. Lynn Henning said box office. And he said, or 2. So his informed opinion, I can only assume with the definitive language he's showing us. He thinks that there's 1 or 2 box office. Box office is not solid. That's not mid-tier signings. And that gets you into what are we talking about? Because the free agent class isn't that deep as far as that upper tier. You're looking at, Carlos Correa, a reunion with an old J.D. Martinez, a reunion with an old injured Justin Verlander potentially.
Which I think will happen. I do think that's inevitable.
You and I have been saying that for a long time.
I was told by multiple people in the organization when fans were crying that they traded Justin Verlander, saying he's gonna finish his career here. It's gonna be the perfect timing.
Yep.
So, but that's a story for another day. But that's going to happen.
Well, if this whole thing is being fulfilled on, don't worry, we're going to bring back a 37-year-old Justin Verlander,
fresh off Tommy John
surgery. Fresh off Tommy John. I don't think that's a fulfillment of what they promised or what we had in mind. We'd love it, but that better be one of like 3 or 4 moves of a significant, scale. So, I mean, you're saying you're skeptical, so you basically already answered my question, and that I don't buy it, and I don't think if Lynn Henning is wrong about what he's saying, they have basically lied to us again, because I don't care about signing guys for $7 million, $8 million, $10 million. They were doing that with Mike Pelfrey 5-6 years ago. That does nothing for me. You ask for people's patience. We've waited. It's been a horrible half decade. You owe us. And this offseason, I agreed with you. This was the one to start making the moves. Not make all of them, but make that first one.
Well, and it was a pretty loaded free agent class. I mean, and by the way, there are still pieces out there, although fewer than there were. Trevor Bauer signed with the Dodgers, but there's a guy. Lock him in for 6 years, and not saying that he would come here, but make the effort. I just think that they didn't do that. They didn't look at this offseason as an opportunity. I think I made the argument beginning offseason was go get your George Springer and go get your DJ LeMahieu. Now, you didn't like the LeMahieu. We have our differences over how
He's a good player.
He's a good
like Springer.
But they both could be significant cornerstones for your future. And you could have got him, I think, at a pretty decent. I still think it was a pretty decent discount. And they decided not to do it. And there were pieces out there. I mean, I think you could have been the team to sign Corey Kluber, and see what happens there. But they went a different direction. I just think that when is that time? I mean, you can't just bring up the prospects next year and then plug in the free agents all at once. It's just not. It doesn't work that way. It's not gonna happen. You're not gonna be able to get every free agent you want anyway. So it's not a one-off season process in building back a contender. And I think that and I think now they're gonna go the other way with their pandemic. They're gonna kind of use the pandemic as an excuse of why it may take a little longer because of, the money and everything. So they couldn't spend as quickly as they might have wanted to, which is going to be a BS line. But I tell you, I think it's coming.
Oh yeah, it kind of already has. I mean, they've already leaked some stuff strategically to the media about their finances and not being as great a shape and whatnot. But it affected everybody.
Well, they laid off. I know they laid off a bunch of scouts in the organization too.
They laid off some business, like marketing type staff too. So yeah, I didn't know as much about the scout angle. I know more like the business side of it. They lost some people too, but. I mean, I'm sure there are financial difficulties, but wow, what an ultimate parachute away, because I don't think that really had anything to do with anything. We had no evidence that they were going to fulfill this promise anyway.
Right.
So my position is if they don't make I don't care about middle tier. If they don't make a big move next offseason, trading for, a disgruntled player like Cabrera that's due for a lot of money or signing somebody outright, I'm done. I'm done thinking it's going to happen. Still going to be a Tigers fan. I'm stuck there. But I'm done having any faith in this for whatever shred I have left. And we talked about it last time you were here. But at the end of the day, we've seen this general manager, whom I know you like and is media friendly.
No, he's a nice guy. That's not to say that I think that he's done an amazing job.
Well, he's done a horrible job. But he's had one kick at the can with deep pockets. And what did we see? Mike Pelfrey, terrible. Jordan Zimmerman, worst contract in Detroit sports history, not baseball history, Detroit sports history. Look it up.
Yeah.
He's the worst. You got a good April in year one out of him.
It was a pretty good April, by the way.
He was awesome. It was funny because your boy Lynn Henning said that it was a bad signing, and Zimmerman's player of the month in April. I'm just roasting Henning. Say, hey, what do you think now? It was a disaster. He was terrible.
It was bad, and that was your Max Scherzer replacement. It's just
not good. And the point is that we've seen Al Avila. It was a small sample size, but we've seen him with the Mike Ilitch version of this pocketbook, and it was not pretty. It was actually one of the uglier off seasons in this organization's history, arguably in the city's history. If you just look at the scale, these contracts were so bad. They spent all this money and got nothing out of it. Mm-hmm. So even if I am to grant that Chris Ilitch is going to fulfill his word, which we have no evidence that he will, the other component is, look who's making the decision with this pocketbook. So I got to go through two doors that I don't think are passable. I got to think, one, Chris Ilitch is going to spend, and two, Al Avila is going to spend wisely.
Yeah.
I think they're 0 for 2.
Am
I too cynical with that?
No, you're not. I mean, there's the money that Al Avila has had, and he only had the blank checkbook once that Dave Dombrowski was, had for many, many years. He had it one time, and he went after Zimmerman, he went after Upton, and it was awful. And so, yeah, I mean, again, you go on track record, and the track record is not good on either front with either guy. And then, the other moves that, the little money Avila has had to spend, I think, there haven't been very many good free agent signings. I mean, last offseason probably were the best with Crone and Scope. I mean, those are the two guys that were looking like they were going to be decent, but again, they're just place fillers. So it's about evidence-based, and you're right. There's no evidence whatsoever that Chris Ilitch will spend, and even if he does, there's no evidence that Al Avila will spend all that great. I think what's most disappointing with Avila, though, is the trading and getting nothing in return, because that was his bread and butter under Dombrowski. I mean, he orchestrated, and we've talked about this years ago, he orchestrated many of the big trades in the Dombrowski era. I mean, he was the point person on a lot of those, but I guess those were easier because you're trading away unknowns for superstars. Now he was in the position of trading away superstars for unknowns, and it's failed miserably. And so maybe that wasn't his bread and butter as I thought. But I think of his tenure, that's been most disappointing to me.
I just have no faith, and I think we've waited long enough, and I think it's to the point where I'll give them one more offseason, one more, and if they don't, again, no middle tier. I want Carlos Correa at Comerica Park being introduced. I think Lindor's probably a given to re-sign with Cohen's money in New York, and Cohen is the richest owner in baseball. But so that may be a tall ask, but I want a marquee player, a multi-time all-star, a guy that's in his 20s still that's going to be here, give him 8 years. Anything short of that, I don't think I'm the only one. I think people are going to be fed up. You're always going to have that sect of people that are the homers. They owe us. Enough's enough. And, you're a patient guy. You're more patient than I am. But if you are saying enough's enough, I think that's the point where enough's enough.
No, it is. 5 years, is a long time. Look, baseball rebuilds take longer than other sports. Football, you can turn it around, I think, in 2 or 3 years.
Yes.
Baseball's, it's trickier because, again, the draft isn't an instant fix in baseball like it is in some of the other sports. And so it's a longer process. But when you're talking about year 5, when you're talking about, A, the assets you had to trade, B, the money your owner has to spend if he wants, and then it's 6 years later, 5 years later, and there's this. Tell me one position player on that roster, on the Major League roster right now, a position player who you think is a cornerstone. There isn't one.
No.
There's no one.
No.
I like Jacoby Jones. I think Jacoby Jones is a fine player. I think he's got tools.
He's been hurt twice and came to my house tonight.
He's had injury issues. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But beyond him, look at the catcher was supposed to be this. Oh, they had all these catchers in the minor leagues they were going to be great. They had to just sign Wilson Ramos.
Yeah. I was going to invite Jacoby Jones actually on the show, but I didn't want to have to draft a waiver for him to walk down the stairs without breaking his neck.
It's not his fault that the guy gets hit in the face with a pitch or
I'm mad
gets
at
hit
him,
all the time.
My buddy Jack, I used to go to Vegas with him all the time. It's not his fault that every time he walks up to you, you lose whatever hand of blackjack you're playing. It's not his fault. I still don't want him around. I don't blame Jacoby Jones. I'm not saying let's pick it outside the guy's house. But you can't trust him.
That was a decent trade, by the way. Joaquin Soria for Jacoby Jones. That was a decent trade.
No, it's not.
They got a solid piece, and when he's healthy, I like him.
You didn't get a solid piece. The guy's in pieces every season. He just can't stay healthy. There's just nothing there. But here's where
a lot of that's not his fault. He gets hit in the face a lot by pitches for some reason.
I'm not saying it's his fault. I'm saying this is the result. It's not about blaming the poor guy. I feel bad that he's got the limbs of an 87-year-old man. I feel very sorry for him. It must be frustrating because he's a real talent. But at the end of the day, I need you on the field for 130, 140 games a year, and we haven't seen that. Here's where I'll pivot, and here's where I'll say something nice because we've been mean for half an hour.
Have we? That doesn't feel like we've been that mean.
We've been unflattering of the organization's direction.
What
for
else
half an
are
hour.
you going to be?
Well,
I don't know. You're struggling to find a single writer in town who's supporting this stuff.
There's not. Yeah, you said it. There's not much to support, but that brings me to my point. The one ray of shining light for my money. If I'm running a team and I have a blank checkbook, I can have anyone I want to manage. AJ Hinch would be my top choice.
Nailed it.
I think AJ Hinch is the best manager in baseball. I think he has that perfect and very rare blend of smarts, analytics, runs a room properly. I think they nailed it, and they had to spend. They got a little lucky with the White Sox, but I'm not going to blame Chris Ilitch. At the end of the day, he went after him. The money was there. That is to his credit. It's not a managerial hire you make if you're just trying to do everything on the cheap. That was the ray of sunshine, the little flare of hope I have. What did you make of the A.J. Hinch hire? Did you like it? And what does it say about their intent? Is it a little bit of a spin to the positive? I
need to refill my glass first. I have to do it under the table because I'm not allowed to have brand name stuff.
You're allowed to have the Spiro Avenue brand.
Yeah, just the Spiro. Okay.
Yeah.
They nailed it with A.J. Hinch. It was the obvious target when Ron Gardenhire stepped down. Ron Gardenhire was always a transitional manager. He was
just like the president, right?
Yeah, he was exactly. He's gonna keep don't rock the boat, keep things calm, and Ron Gardenhire, to his credit, there was never a bad headline about Ron. There was nothing negative about Ron Gardenhire, the person, when he was here.
No,
even with Ausmus, who had a team to win, he put his foot in his mouth a lot and made some ridiculous comments. And so but with Gardenhire, it was 3 years of just even keel. He was here to babysit.
He was the caretaker.
So it was always going to be, the next manager was going to be the guy, just like Leland was going to be the guy to put the Tigers over the top. Alan Trammell was never going to be that guy. Alan Trammell was hired because the team stunk and they needed sell some tickets, so they hired Trammell and they made those ridiculous Fox Sports commercials with Trammell and Parrish and Kirk Gibson. Like whenever you're putting your manager on the cover of the media guide, you suck.
Oh yeah,
and that's exactly. But it did create excitement for a minute.
That was people that were educated. It was sentimental.
But for people that love to reminisce about the '80s Tigers, and there are a lot of those people, love to just go to the ballpark and not really care about whether they win or lose, but just enjoy the night out. That was fine. But you always were going to have Gardenhire be that transition guy and then hire the next guy, and they nailed it. It was the obvious choice from the minute Gardenhire announced. It was the obvious choice from the minute A.J. Hinch got suspended the year before. Right then you had to target. You knew Gardenhire was probably not going to go beyond his 3-year contract. Right then you had to target. This is our guy. You say what you want about the cheating scandal. I don't know how much he knew. He probably knew more than he let on at the beginning. I mean, you're the manager. You probably know things. But that's not the Tigers' problem. Like, the Tigers' objective is to get the best manager possible. It doesn't matter what he did in Houston. He didn't murder anybody. I mean, there are people
he served the penalty.
He served his penalty. He's rightfully allowed to. I mean, look, the Red Sox, they went back and got Cora. And, and rightly so. I mean, these are World Series winning managers. And so it was absolutely the right call. It wasn't the Tigers' issue. You heard a lot of people early on saying, I can't believe they went after the cheater. And give me a break. Your objective is to win baseball games. And when you have the team to win, you want the manager to make as much of a difference as possible. There's no manager who's going to make more than 7 wins a year difference, 8 wins, whatever the number is. But you want that manager who will get you that number based on his lineups, his approaches, his analytics. And A.J. Hinch is top of the line. And they got very fortunate that the White Sox decided to play Old Timers Day with Tony La Russa.
That was the most botched. They have everything.
And if they would have known about the drunk driving beforehand, he wouldn't have got the job. And then A.J. Hinch was going to Chicago after Detroit for the interview. I mean, and clearly the White Sox are in a better position to win right now. So anybody's going to take that job over the Tigers' job. And they got fortunate. All the dominoes fell into place for the Tigers, and they made a great hire. But again, it's only a great hire if you add to what he has to work with, and you do it quickly. I don't think A.J. Hinch signed up to come here, to wait 5 years.
Well, and that's a key point you just made.
But let me make one more key point. Really, you talk about the money. The managerial money isn't a big deal. I've heard this argument before. There's a low end, there's a high end. It's not a huge amount of money, so I'm not going to give the Tigers credit for spending the money, because I think in relative, the difference of $2 million, $3 million is not a big deal for a billionaire owner, even one who's not spending like Chris Ilitch. So I'm not going to give him credit for going and spending the money to hire the manager. I give him credit for going and getting the best manager and Al Avila was on the phone with him 5 seconds after the World Series ended and his suspension was lifted. So I give them credit for the all-out pursuit. It was the only target. It should have been the only target, and they got it done. But again, unless you do something about it, no one's going to remember this hire in 50 years if the team doesn't win, and they're not in position to win right now.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, nail on the head. It's an interesting point. I mean, it is essentially a rounding error whether you hire a manager for $3 million or 1.5.
It's no different. I mean, there's a high end for what you pay a manager and a low end, and if it's it's maybe a difference of $3 million at the most. That's nothing. Yeah, they're going to sign Wilson Ramos for $2 million to plug a hole at catcher. I mean, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, no.
So I won't give him credit for that, because I heard that I was playing golf with someone this fall, and another sports writer, and they said, "Do you think they'll spend to get A.J. Hinch?" I'm like, "Spend to get a manager? Yeah, they'll spend to get the manager. There's no difference between 1.5 and 3.5 or $5 million." In that, for me, it's a big difference. For that realm of things, it's pennies
at that scale.
And so I don't give him credit for that. But the all-out pursuit to get him, and you knew it from the beginning that they were gonna go after it. They didn't let the hang up of Houston deter them. And I give them credit for that. But I wrote in that article where I talked about how they should be spending now, it's a great hire if, and we're far from the if right now.
And hopefully not too much farther, but
Right.
we were hoping the if was going to be this offseason.
No, it should have started.
You made the point, and you made a great point, because I did bring up the money even on this show. Obviously, I know it's not the same as the money being there for a player, but I think you did make sort of a good debunking of that element of it. But the other side, I'm not convinced that A.J. Hinch takes this job. It's a guy with options, even if he had to wait a little longer, wait one more offseason. I'm not convinced he takes this job without certain assurances of the direction. So again, now we're back. We're back into the realm of promises.
Right.
But I feel like Chris Ilitch and Al Veal would be more likely to lie to me than A.J. Hinch. I just think they probably respect A.J. Hinch more than Justin.
Well, you
Spiro.
sure would hope so. I mean, well, for instance, if A.J. Hinch is here for 3 years and the team doesn't do anything, I mean, this guy, is well within his right to go on a year-long speaking tour of how he was lied to by the Tigers. And yes, you're right. I mean, of course.
That's encouraging. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with that, and that's why that's why the hiring of Hinch is. And I don't make as much about the hiring of a manager as a lot of people do. In baseball, but this one I think was huge. I like this one a lot. I think it was impactful. It sent the right message, and that the Tigers were going to get their guy. It sent the message that the Tigers were going to start winning. And you're right; he's not taking the job. He has a number of offers. He could entertain next offseason, halfway point this season.
He's young. He's like 40 still.
I mean, the guy is the guy served his time and is still widely regarded as if not the best, the top 3 manager in baseball. You're right. It sent the right messages. So,
that's the silver lining. And you have to look at where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
We have nothing else to go on. And that it extends beyond the Tigers. The whole state of Detroit sports is a disaster. And for, us, I know you sort of detach yourself to an extent, but I'm a Michigan State guy. Football and basketball ain't looking so hot now. So, yeah, I have to look at okay, maybe Chris Ilitch said something really sexy in that meeting with A.J. Hinch about what's on the horizon. That's what we have to go on, and that's all we have. But you're right. I mean, without that step 2, step 3, step 4 of that process, it really means nothing.
Right. Well, I liken that. I almost liken the A.J. Hinch signing to as big of a deal and impactful of a deal as the Red Wings bringing Yzerman back. I think that it's almost that big of a deal. And again, I'm someone who's not even that big into managers. But this guy, and again, the message it sends, like you said, but if they don't spend, this town's you're going to lose this fan base for a decade. I mean, look what happened in the 90s. They lost the fan base for the complete 90s. I mean, and much of the early 2000s. You lost a whole generation of baseball fans. And if they don't fulfill this promise, they're going to do it again.
And fans have paid their dues, and that's what it keeps coming back to. And we're there. We're not. You already asked us. Mm-hmm. We've waited a long time. We're at the point where it's time to move. And you made the point with Yzerman. This is where as many issues as I've had with Chris Ilitch and how he's done things with the district, with the Red Wings, with the Tigers. He hired, for my money, the best manager for his baseball team and the best GM for his hockey team. So that is the sign of the positive. And that's all we have really to look for is constellations that look pretty, because there's no real tangible result so far for any of these teams, and certainly not either of Chris Ilitch's products, which have the best lottery odds in hockey every year and are picking top 3 in baseball every year. So we got a long way to go. I don't know. We'll finish with the Tigers here. If you had to guess, what year is this team back in the playoffs? Not contending. I
honestly thought when this all started, I was looking at 2021 when the rebuild started.
Me too.
And that was under the assumption, crazy as it seems, that they get something for Justin Verlander and JD Martinez and all these pieces. They got more for Alex Avila and Justin Wilson than they got for JD Martinez and Justin Verlander. So then I thought, but now I'm looking at, it's TBA. How can you put a number on it until you see? All right, they got Torkelson. We're going to see him this year, probably. That's going to be fun.
You think so?
I think so, absolutely.
Henning doesn't think so.
I think they will. I think they absolutely will.
He's starting in single A. That's a huge climb for 3 months.
Yeah, I think that we will. That's my prediction. I've been wrong before. But they got these guys you're going to see. But again, until they make that first, wow, that guy, it was like the whole, it was the Pudge Rodriguez signing. I mean, this guy won a World Series, he's a future Hall of Famer, and he's coming to Detroit. Until something like that happens, that cornerstone is plugged in. You look at the position players, 9 positions, and you can't say one of them is part of your winning future.
Not on their opening day roster.
No,
anyway. Yeah.
I mean, you got Torkelson and you got Green. Okay, but Green's still just not long out of high school. I mean, he looked great in spring training. That's promising. But on the roster right now, I mean, there should be pieces on that roster right now. I mean, Nico Goodrum, Candelario, Jacoby Jones, whatever. But there should be pieces on that roster right now in the position player portion of things that should be considered part of your future, and there's not, and that's a problem because you're not going to fill all those in the minors, especially when the minors is much more heavily based on your pitching than your offense.
And look at what we are doing. We're talking about, Jacoby Jones is a good piece, and we're spending 10 minutes trying to discuss, talk ourselves into it, so to speak. Candelario, it was a very nice pandemic season. Look at his body of work. His OPS is like 700. I mean, and it's not a tiny sample size in terms of at-bats. We're trying to talk ourselves into that, and that is it's sort of
but
like
that's the point I've been making, and I made this when I wrote that column about the signing now, is that when you look at the whole diamond and you don't see one guy,
that there's no debate. It's like this guy.
No, there's nobody that has a position locked in. That's a problem, and that's why I said that the free agency thing. It's not just going to be like we're ready to contend. Our prospects are ready. Let's sign all our guys. First of all, you're not going to be able to accomplish all that in a single off season. That's why you had to start now. And again, just the timing of it, the pandemic, there are bargains out there long term. Yes, spend a little bit more now that you don't have. I shouldn't say don't have.
You don't have.
They have the money.
You haven't
budgeted
for it. Yeah,
but they have the money.
Yeah.
Spend a little bit extra now to pay off down there and start getting your pieces. Because perfect example. If you looked at 2006, it was boom, 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 3 off seasons, which meshed with the Verlanders, the Zamayas, the Grandersons and then it all came together. So it's not just so now. If you're asking me now, 2024, 2025. Because it's not going to be
in the playoffs.
Just to be in the because it's not going to be a single off season.
Now you're talking about an 8 or 9 year rebuild,
and that's unacceptable. It's
beyond unacceptable.
I did.
Since when are you a bigger cynic than me? I'm kind of like 2023.
Are you kidding me?
You're a year past me.
Well,
you're the first person to ever be more cynical than me in this studio.
I look at what it was, but I mean, you want to do the blueprint? Do the blueprint of the Astros. I mean, it wasn't. Didn't happen overnight, the putting the pieces in, whether you're signing guys or trading for guys, and again, and that's the big problem. And you started it off the show, and I think that's really the root of things is that these major assets yielded no returns, and I think that's why you could be looking at an 8 or 9 year rebuild instead of a 4 or 5 year rebuild.
Well, I was depressed before you got here. I was happy to see you for 5 minutes. Now I'm depressed again more than when we started. But there you go. Tony Paul, we've had 35 guests on this show over the years, and you're the first one to come in as more of a cynic than me. So you should get a plaque for that. Maybe we'll put that on the wall next to your picture. So anyway, that's your Tigers talk. You know what we do. You're the big fan of this show. You've called it maybe the best Detroit sports show that's not on 97.1. That's sort of.
Oh, I would put it up ahead of stuff on 97.1.
Well, don't be mean to Stoney. Don't be mean to Stoney.
I really enjoyed when he was here.
Stoney was great.
No,
I know Mike Valeni's the best talent in town, but I do think we could hold ourselves up against anybody else over there, and no disrespect to them, but that is what it is. But so point being,
do I have to look at the screen? I didn't bring my glasses. This could be problematic.
No, you don't.
Right.
No, we actually don't even have graphics for the round. So we're other than the intro, we're graphics free for this one.
Okay.
This is what happens when Ben is taking 6 meetings on my behalf. So which he did. He sat in on our marketing meeting today because I couldn't go. So our producer.
That's how big this thing has become. You guys have marketing meetings.
Oh yeah,
it's incredible.
Yeah, honestly, we're trying. We really are. It's all to impress you. So you know the speed round, similar to, word association, but a little longer form than that. So I'm just going to rattle them off. We'll start here. It's one of my favorite ones to ask the baseball guys.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to a game. Let me frame this properly. You're going to a game as a fan, not as a writer. I don't care about the press box. You're going to a game as a fan. Better baseball venue, Tiger Stadium, Comerica Park.
Oh, Tiger Stadium, without a doubt. You're right on top of the action. Comerica Park is gorgeous. Don't get me wrong. It's a very nice ballpark, but some of those seats are so far away. They're this, depending on the time of day. In the middle of the summer, there's you can roast. Absolutely roast in those seats. Tiger Stadium had a little bit more shade, and you're right on top of the action. For me, no brainer.
Yeah,
Comerica's nice, very nice. They did a nice job with it. I'm glad they moved the fences in. The atmosphere for the playoffs was amazing.
Yes.
No question. But to watch a game and to be right there and, Tiger Stadium.
I'm with you. I don't get the hate for Comerica Park like Matt Derry, Mike Vunny. They just shit on it like it's a dump. It's a great place. But, yeah, Tiger Stadium, when I was a kid, I used to go to the upper, center field, last row. And, you're still, above the center fielder. Yeah. It was so cool. But great place.
Oh, love it.
Staying on the Tigers. 2006 Tigers versus 2012 Tigers, 7-game series. Who wins?
2012. I'm of the opinion that the 2006 Tigers were not a great collection of talent, or roster talent, good players.
Yeah.
Very good players all the way around. But no, 2012 and 2013, those teams were just loaded.
Do they have a different fate, either or both of those teams, if they don't sweep the ALCS and sit around for a week without playing?
Know.
I've always thought that.
I never really thought that was a big deal growing up watching baseball until it happened to the Tigers over and over.
And it's how they lost, so it's not just that they lost.
It's how bad they looked.
Falling down.
Yeah, it just maybe. But who can tell you to, take a little longer to win this series? Obviously you want to get done in 4 or 5 and have your rotation set up. It was just, they were better than the Cardinals. They were better than the Giants.
Clearly better than both of those teams.
Clearly better than the Cardinals. I think the Giants were a pretty underrated team. They had some talent on that team.
Yeah, but the 2012 Tigers were also better than the 06.
Yeah.
So it's
the 2006 Cardinals were one of the worst teams.
They should have even been in the playoffs. The 83-win team.
No, but for me, I've always made the case that the 2006 Tigers, who were a lot of fun and a good team, were not a great team. They caught lightning in a bottle. Everything came together. Everything that went right. You're hitting walk-off home runs on a nightly basis. It was just everything. It didn't matter if they were down in a game. It was just everything went right. Perfect storm. 2012, 2013 Tigers. 2013 Tigers might have been the best team.
That is the best team
in franchise history. If you look at it, all due respect to 68 Tigers and all the, I didn't see him play, but that 2013 team was loaded. And if one pitch doesn't go against them in that game 2, they win the World Series. I'll never stop believing that.
Yeah, I think you're in a crowded boat on that take. I'm right there with you. That worst game I've ever been to, I was at Fenway, and Benoit's brought in 5-1 in bottom of the 8th, when Ortiz is on deck, getting ready to take his hacks, and I tell my buddy, just walk him. Not intentional, like the semi-intentional walk. Don't throw him a single strike.
Mm-hmm.
He's jacked up. He's the most clutch hitter ever. Try to get himself out. If you walk him, it's 5-2. You're 2 outs. Yeah. Go get Mike Napoli. Yeah. I would say
he's just got to win that game.
Benoit's throwing his warm-up pitches. Mm-hmm. And the thing about that was so torturous was a 4-run lead in that game felt like 100 because they hadn't scored dick in 2 games.
I know. The Tigers.
Sanchez shut him out in game 1.
With no hitters.
Yeah,
for 5 or 6 innings. But the first 2 or 3 games.
They didn't have any hits. They didn't have 4 hits going into that inning in the whole series so far, let alone 4 runs.
Now, would you have brought in Phil Koch over Benoit?
No,
absolutely not.
I was fine with Benoit. I think you put your best guy out there.
And he was.
But
I couldn't believe the uproar of fans, and it was all hindsight crap. These fans acting like Phil Koch was Aroldis
I
Chapman or
hated
something.
Phil
I mean, it was always Benoit. He was always your best guy. I thought
You use your best guy in the high leverage spot, but I just think
that's a good point though.
My buddy James, one of my best friends, will vouch for me till we die that the guy's warming up. It's that Ortiz isn't even in the box yet, and I'm saying just you can't let him beat you. If Napoli clears the bases and ties the game with a double or something, God bless you. Don't let the best clutch hitter of this era maybe ever beat you. And it was a meatball in the first pitch. But anyway,
it wasn't a good pitch.
Biggest jerk you've ever covered, just as a guy. I have a feeling I know your answer.
Delman Young.
Yeah, there you go.
Delman Young.
It's Delman Young. We talked about
just
an asshole.
Nasty guy.
We talked about his stuff in New York. I can't remember if it was anti-Semitic, homophobic, or I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, and that was bad. I remember that stuff when he got arrested in New York. Like I had been out to the bar till like 2 or 3 in the morning or something, and like it all broke at like 5:36 in the morning, and my boss is calling. I've just got whatever. But the crazy thing is his brother is one of the nicest people I've ever covered. In Dimitri.
Yep.
But Delman was he was a piece of work, and you ask any reporter in town. And I remember one time Delman was sitting at his locker all grumpy, and Lynn Henning's just mulling around, and Delman barks at him, "I'm not talking." And Lynn goes, "I wasn't looking to talk to you, Delman." Like,
well,
but this is a guy who, the stories I heard were, he'd send, the clubbies to get Starbucks every day and didn't even pay them for the Starbucks. Like, even that he didn't tip, just didn't even pay them for the Starbucks.
Aren't you, what's the process? I know they do tips. I thought it was at the end of the year they give like a big tip.
They do. They do. But clubbies get tipped out by the road team at the end of each series, and then usually at the end of the year they get big tips. But this wasn't even about tipping the clubby. He didn't even pay for the Starbucks.
Well, geez, I hope the clubby got his money back.
Yeah.
My God.
Yeah, I doubt it was from him.
I had a soft spot for Delman Young.
The guy threw a bat at an umpire. What do you expect?
He's a clown. I just like that,
he's pitching now, by the way.
Delman Young?
In like Japan or somewhere. He's pitching. I
saw
something on Twitter. He was pitching.
He's going like the Anthony Ghost route. That's kind of interesting. Delman will always have the playoffs. Don't throw Delman Young a fastball on the first pitch.
I'll tell you, he was huge in the playoffs
for Baltimore too. He killed the Tigers.
But he was. But and it's not like I had any major interactions with him personally about but I saw him and heard about him, and he just wasn't friendly. There are guys who aren't friendly. There's a lot of professional athletes who aren't friendly, but they're professional. If they know that they have to talk, and they're fine with it. But he was just, man, I can't imagine going through every day just that angry. And that's kind of what I felt about him.
Especially when, first overall pick, he has all this money, he's got a great lifestyle. Yeah. It's like, pull it together, buddy. I would think your runner-up would have been David Price, not to speak for you.
I didn't have an issue with David Price.
He had an issue with me. He didn't like you.
He didn't like me, and I asked a very legitimate question, and he didn't like it.
That was about he was trying to throw too many fastballs.
It was that year he came to the Tigers where he wanted his theory was, I want to get the batter out in 3 pitches or less.
Going right after everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, there was the game against the Yankees, who have traditionally beaten him badly, and he did that. They were hammering him on the first pitch or second pitch of an at bat. They were ambushing him. He got destroyed. I asked Ausmus the question, is there such thing as throwing too many strikes? And Ausmus said, yes, there is. And I asked David Price that question, and we never spoke again.
Well, he doesn't like a lot of people. He went off on Eckersley when he was in Boston. He's kind of a weird guy.
Yeah.
So let's go to the flip side of the coin. The nicest guy you've ever covered. Don't care about his baseball skill. Just nicest player you've ever covered.
There's a lot of them.
I'll throw one of them out.
Okay, let me think here. I want to be accurate. Tory Hunter, and you're going to say that there's
a conflict there.
There's a conflict.
He doesn't like your. He would call it lifestyle.
I don't get off to the greatest start either, because when the Tigers acquired him, and we first had our chance to interview him was at Tiger Fest right before Tiger Fest began. And I asked him the question about it, and he didn't like it. And it was a rough start, but super nice. The guy is, very, very nice guy. All the catchers are always great.
Catchers, what's that about?
No, it's just they all have to speak after every game, so they're because they have to talk about the pitcher, and so they're always really nice. Alex Avila, I mean, he would probably be my runner-up, if not my first. So, but Torrey Hunter was, just amazingly kind.
Been nice to see James McCann pop right after he left, and the guys signing big money deals now.
I got ripped for saying they would miss James McCann. And
I may have been one of them. I can't remember.
You might have been.
I can't remember.
By several people because I didn't see them having in the minors what they thought they had. And I thought James McCann, particularly as a platoon catcher, again, he's great against lefties, struggles against righties. But I got ripped for saying they were going to miss him. So I'm not right all the time, but I'll take the credit when I am.
Definitely wave the flag. The Jake Rogers thing, it's like, oh, he's hitting 220 in the minors. I'm sure he'll figure it out. I never understood it. Like, where's the track record for these minor league guys that couldn't hit in the minors and then just raked in the big leagues? I mean, maybe like there's been one or two ever, but I can't remember.
Well, they say there's actually been more than you think. And Jim Price, God love him, always brings up. And even Leland used to bring this up, in that the lights are better in the majors than they are in the minors.
Like a literal point? Like
literally the lights are better in the major leagues than they are in the minor leagues.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, Leland had brought that up. Leland had brought that up before. I've heard Jim Price say it. And if you go to some of these podunk towns in minor leagues, and it's they're like light posts you'd see at a high school game. I've heard that argument before. I have not looked into it.
Look,
I've never gone on Baseball Reference and compared. I don't care that much.
I know.
I've heard that argument before.
It's not perfectly linear. I'm not saying that like a 270 hitter in the minors can't possibly hit 280 ever. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying an example of a guy that can't hit at all, that is just terrible in the minors, then becoming a solid hitter in the majors. I haven't seen that, but apparently Jake Rogers, they think it's going to happen.
Right.
Pivot to this. Favorite road ballpark?
I've been to a lot of good ones. San Francisco's amazing.
Dying to get there. I haven't been.
It's amazing. I was there for the World Series, and man, that place was loud, especially when Justin.
They had a lot to cheer for. They had a lot to cheer for.
That's got to be up there. That's probably number one. But PNC, everyone raves about. It's great for photos. No question. It's got to be the biggest selfie ballpark in baseball with the rivers and the bridges. That's up there. But one that a lot of people don't talk about that I really love, and it stood the test of time, and they've done some work to it too, but is Kauffman Stadium in Kansas City. I just think it's a great ballpark, great venue. I love the fountain out there, especially now that they went to the grass, and just an underrated ballpark for me. So of the older ones, that would be it. Fenway and Wrigley are fine.
They're cool for what they are. It's almost like apples to oranges. You almost need them like in a different category.
Right. Now, I've never been to Camden Yards, and a lot of people would put Camden.
I like Camden. Yeah, I've been to Camden. I had like a partial season ticket plan to the Cubs. I grew up actually a Cubs fan just because I love Sammy Sosa and went to law school in Chicago. So, yeah, I have a sentimental thing for Wrigley, but it is a dump. But
the area around the ballpark,
Wrigleyville's a lot of fun. It's amazing. A lot of fun. Yeah, there's no question about that.
So if you're talking about best atmosphere neighborhood, it's got to be Wrigley. Of the ballparks I've been to, I've only been to probably about 15 to 20. So I've been to all of them.
That's pretty good. Better than most. I'm going to finish with two regarding our alma mater, Michigan State. We were there at different times. I'm old.
When were you there?
I'm sorry?
When were you there?
I graduated in 2011, so
a little bit after me.
Yeah, a little bit after you. So I'm old, but
not that much. Only 9 years.
Okay, but 9 years. That brings me to my point. I was in East Lansing a few months back, and I don't even recognize the place. I'm wondering, kind of a weird question, but this is more kind of a selfish thing because I'm curious. Tony Paul sitting in East Lansing in his dorm or in his apartment, like. What are you doing in your dorm? What was Tony Paul doing? College Tony Paul doing? Were you playing like Madden back then? What were you doing then?
No, I was actually very rarely in my dorm. I was I basically lived at the student newspaper, State News. I wasn't there much.
You were a State News guy?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Were you there when Jamel Hill was there?
No, she was there just before me.
Okay,
I was there when Charles Robinson was there.
Okay. So my brother was there with Jamel.
Yeah, she was, I think, just before me.
Okay.
Her and Rex Road were like just before me. Solari, that crowd.
Finally, so all right, you said two people that hated me. You got the one that likes me, so that's good. Rexroad hates me.
Yeah, I haven't been to East Lansing much lately, but the last time I did go, I did think the same thing. I don't recognize
It's
it anymore.
unrecognizable.
There's a lot more. There's a lot less dive food and a lot more sushi than I would have had in college.
So you were a grinder. You were working hard.
Yeah, I was at the State News a ton.
Yeah.
And when I wasn't there, we were at the Peanut Barrel. So that's about
You're
it.
a peanut barrel guy. So
Yeah.
am I. I love the peanut
Yep.
barrel.
They
And
don't allow the peanuts anymore though, which
I know it's the
because of
bummer.
insurance reasons.
I heard that. I didn't know that was the reason. I
Yeah.
heard they weren't doing that
Yeah.
though. It's just like they were still doing it when I was there.
Yeah, no, not for the last I think 5 or 6 years.
Luckily, I lived right next door to the peanut barrel. Literally, I could hit the peanut barrel with a football from my apartment. Literally, and I don't have a great arm. It was that close. I love the peanut barrel,
Yeah.
and I was newly 21, so I was like,
yeah.
I'm gonna go downstairs to the bar.
Yeah.
It's more of like the older guy bar, but
Yeah.
I've always liked that.
Oh,
vibe
it's just
more.
it was. I mean, there were all the there was all the other stuff, the rib and the land shark and all that, but the peanut barrel was just great. I mean, the Long Islands, they have the 2 Long Island rule, because they're so strong.
Yes,
and
notoriously
strong. Like even if you had 2, you're probably going to be throwing up that evening. But the rule was so enforced that you could go during the day on a football Saturday and have your 2 Long Islands during Michigan State's football game. And then you could leave and you could come back at 11 at night and you would try to order one. And they would remember that you had 2. I don't know how they did it, but you were not getting a 3rd Long Island.
They're doing
from the
you a
peanut
favor.
barrel. They
Yeah.
were, but you were not getting a 3rd Long Island.
I never wanted a second one actually because you have
They were
that
really
first,
sweet.
They're so
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
they're
they're
strong
really
and they're
sweet.
sweet. It's like
Yeah.
it's more like the sweetness
Right.
and the. But I love the peanut barrel,
Mhm.
and that brings us to our last one. The peanut barrel is still there, thank goodness.
Mhm.
Your favorite defunct East Lansing establishment?
Yeah, that's easy. That was, I think it was, I'm trying to get the name because there was All American Pita or something like that. Or it was a pita place. Anyway, it was right near the Peanut Barrel. It's right across Grand River. It was a pita place. It was really good. They had waffle fries. I want to say All American, but I could be wrong on that.
It must have been gone before I was there.
Probably, I think it
Yeah.
was. It might have even ended just after I left. But they were great, and it was off topic, but I have more gray hair now, but I did have gray hair in college, and so it obviously stood out. Seeing a younger person with gray hair, so I would go to the pita place, whatever it was called, I can't even remember, and get an order. And there was always the two college girls working, and they loved my gray hair, loved it to the point where they would give me free waffle fries. They loved it that much.
Free waffle
Fries because they loved my gray hair. They were so intrigued by it. Well, but at times in college, I would toy with dyeing it blonde, because that's what we did in the 90s and early 2000s. And so I did that, dyed it bleach blonde a few times. I remember once I went freshly dyed to the pita pit and or whatever it was called, and the girls were there and they were pissed.
They
were
pissed over
pissed.
your blonde hair?
Yes, I did not. Not only did I not get free waffle fries that day, I went back to the State News office. Someone else had walked over after me to get food from there. They came back, and that person said to me, "Hey, you know those girls over at the pita place?"
They're
I'm
telling
yeah.
other people?
Yeah, they're pissy.
That's the weirdest gripe I've ever heard in my life.
I know.
It's like,
Well, I don't know. They were pissed that I dyed my hair. But the other one that was good was Flats. I don't know if that was. Flats
see,
was so good.
that was mine.
That was so good.
Also, right next door to me. It
And
was
so
like-
unique.
Yeah.
Everything was just but at the time it was unique.
Yeah.
But it was so good. And their fries were really good too. Just traditional fries, but really good. Flats was great.
Flats had.
I think the pita one was only because I have a story about that. Flats was probably the place I went to more often than
Flats, I don't even know what to call it. Like, they had, quesadillas.
That's basically what it was. Everything
Yeah.
was a quesadilla. You
Yeah.
just put in burger meat or whatever you wanted in it.
But I don't know if you remember, on football game days, they would have breakfast specials. So they would have, these in-house homemade blueberry pancakes,
Oh, wow.
and they would open earlier on game days. So they did have breakfast, I think, every day, but they opened up 3 hours earlier just on football game
Yeah.
days. And, because for the people that are tailgating at
Right.
7 a.m.
Right.
So
I did not know that. That would have been good to know.
they
at the
were
time.
they were awesome. The food was great for one, but the atmosphere was great. But yeah, they were right downstairs. So my buddies and I, we would just go downstairs, have breakfast like on tailgate Saturdays, and then just walk across the street to the stadium, basically. But it was the best.
Flats was great.
Flats was my
I don't know
answer.
how that didn't last.
It was
because I mean it was always packed every time I was there. Like it was always busy.
They didn't pay their taxes.
That's probably. I think there were a few places like that in East Lansing.
There was like they got shut down. It wasn't like a voluntary closure.
Okay, yeah.
I was walking home one day because I passed it every day walking back to my apartment, and there was like a sign. It was like seized by the government. Yeah. It was not like a happy ending for
That's
them.
That's unfortunate because that place was excellent.
My favorite place up there before it closed. But that was a bummer. And I mean, that closed like 2 years before I left. Flats Grill, that was the best.
Yeah.
Well, Tony Paul, man, you did great. Happy to have you back, man.
Thanks for having me. I love what you've done with the place. Everything's branded. I mean, you got your own water here.
I know. We're really trying to make you happy.
It's incredible. You're doing great work.
No, I appreciate it, and appreciate your public support of the show. And we have a lot of fun stuff still coming.
Who's the next guest?
Colton Pouncey from The Athletic will be in on Tuesday of next week, and he will be.
There's a lot to talk about in Michigan State.
A lot going on, and all those guys at The Athletic. I mean, they don't get any of these hires wrong. It's like they're all good. I mean, we've had James Edwards in here. Craig Custance is a little higher up the chain. James Edwards covering the Pistons is great. Max Boltman was great.
How about Katie?
Katie Strang?
Katie's the best.
Katie Strang, another Michigan State alum, by the way, has turned me down to do the show like 12 times.
Yeah, she's probably smarter than the rest of us.
No, yeah.
But she's whatever that
not
is
very
about,
nice girl.
She is one of the best. I mean, she did that story about the Angels this week with Mickey Callaway. And, the story she's done on the sexual abuse in the hockey circles
that was
has been very amazing and impactful. She's a really, really good reporter.
One of my favorites. It's that outlet, The Athletic, and I took some heat for. I mean, I was right out of the gate. The day one before it even launched in Detroit was like, I think this will work. We talked the last time you were in here about the subscription model, and you guys have gone into that pool now. And the model is one thing; it's a separate argument. But the hires they're making are great.
Oh yeah, you got to hire the right people, and The Athletic in Detroit has done a pretty good job.
I'd pay to read you. I'd pay to read some of your colleagues at the News and Freep. There's a lot of guys I wouldn't pay for. The Athletic, it's like they don't have a dud. I'm so impressed by that.
No, their model is also longer form, which means they get more time to work on stuff.
They have VC
that's a
money
big deal. I mean, when you're not having to file daily grind stuff that we all have to do, not crying about what we do because I love what we do, but they produce a lot of great journalism because they're given the time. And I think that if more outlets hired more people and gave their reporters the time to do things, enterprise and all that stuff, then more outlets would be successul.
Oh, certainly in your case. I mean, you're reporting, and we've discussed that. I mean, you're truly one of the best in your work covering Michigan State, and what we saw at the softball team and the Blackwell stuff. With the football program, you're really A+.
That's why I'm really popular in East Lansing. There are coaches that still will talk to me. They're up in Michigan State, so
that's good for you. We're kindred on this because my fan base, for the most part, hates me, which is really interesting. It's it's like I'm not even gonna go down that road. If you say anything honest about Michigan State in a negative light, like totally honest, even an objective truth. It's like you're a hater, you're a bad guy.
Well, that's the way I found that is very much the case with college athletics because there's such a loyalty to there's more of a loyalty to colleges than even to pro sports among fan bases because you are who you are. I went to Michigan State. I'm a Spartan through the good or the bad, and don't say anything bad about my team because I'll fight you to it. And I found that during the reporting on a lot of the Michigan State stuff that
we could talk about it over.
Hey, I'm not saying people are dumb if they don't like me. I mean, I'm not overly likable all the time. So
you're crazy. Yeah. If you don't like Tony Paul, you're nuts. That's why we keep bringing you back, and I'm glad you keep obliging us. So,
do you have a Detroit News subscription?
I do. We talked about this last time. We talked about it, and if I recall, producer Ben on the other side of the wall here, the great and powerful Oz, subscribed while you were sitting in that chair,
nice.
Out of respect for you.
Nice.
So you
I
guys
definitely do.
See, there you go. Well, yeah, I was early even before you appeared, but you were one of the reasons why. For one, I want to support because you were the one that said you'll miss the newspapers when they're gone.
You absolutely will because if you lose the newspapers,
radio stations,
you lose the radio station content, you lose TV content. I mean, I love my friends in the TV and radio industry, and I have some very great journalists in this market in all avenues. But the newspapers tend to be more comprehensive in what they cover. obviously because they're not limited to a 21-minute broadcast or limited to 5 or 8 minute segments on the radio. So yeah, I honestly believe there will be a big ripple effect if we were to go out, and we're not going anywhere right now. So I mean, that's not.
Can we gift subscriptions at the Athletic?
That's a good question. I don't know. They should be able to do that. I'm guessing you probably can. You just sign up under someone else's, sign up for someone else and give them, But
we did.
I haven't honestly. I haven't done the research on it because we get our subscriptions, but.
Let's look into that. Maybe we do a little promo. We did it for the Athletic when they first started. It was something like retweet our thing, and we gave away like 5 annual subscriptions.
I'll look into it. Let's see what.
If we can gift it, I don't want to be getting into the weeds of I'm logging into Joe Martinez 372's account and giving him my credit card and stuff. But if I can gift one, we'll do that. Maybe retweet this show. So Tony Paul, find him on Twitter, Tony Paul 1984 at Tony Paul 1984. Great pleasure, man.
Thanks
Love
for
having
me.
You back.
Yeah.
Hopefully, maybe another month, 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah.
Didn't scare you off?
No, not at all.
Thanks.
I enjoyed coming here.
I appreciate it.
Studio is something else.
Like I said, all for you, man. All for you. So,
how does this studio compare to like 97.1? Did Stoney tell you, or is it like similar? Or?
Well, it's nicer than when even he was in here. We've made like upgrades since he was in here, but he did say it was very nice. Yeah. He said very nice things about our show and me as a talent and all that, but he didn't say too much about the studio. There is
he said a lot about the studio, Justin.
Not in comparison to 97.1, he didn't. Not in that context. But I will say there is someone who assisted us with the build of our little TriCaster system who has a prominent hand over at 97.1, who's been a consultant from the beginning for us. And his opinion was that we're like, from a technological standpoint, like on par with them. Nice. And from an aesthetic standpoint, they don't really put much into that. It looks very... it looks like a factory in there.
Yeah, they spruced it up a little bit when they started doing the live stream with the cameras, but yeah.
Very little. I don't like the aesthetic. I like the aesthetic we got here. I'm partial.
This is impressive.
It's the right colors. I appreciate it. So check out, by the way, virgilsvineyard.com. One last quick reminder. Promo code Spiro, SPIRO. It's a really good wine anyway. Like, why not get 10% off? It's fantastic. My mom, who's a big fan of this show, said she wants to support them, so she's not going to use the promo code. And I said, no, it doesn't help us if you don't use the promo code. Mom, please use the promo code. So please, if you're out there, use the promo code Spiro, virgilsvineyard.com. They're awesome. Thanks to Ben, the great man behind the wall here. Ben, great job by you as always. Colton Pouncey in studio on Tuesday for the first time. Deep dive on Michigan State football. He is one of the finest writers in the state of Michigan. Happy to have him here for the very first time in a few days. And right around that same time, we'll be running Off the Curb episode 2. We had a lot of fun with you guys with our new solo show. Tony, I don't know if you watched that.
Wow, you really made it now.
I don't know if I made it, but
2 shows.
I got a huge mouth, so I could go 4 hours by myself. Ben's like, we got to get down to 20, so we'll be back with that too. Spiro Avenue Show, Justin Spiro. Thank you all for watching. This has been Tony Paul, Ben Augusta on the other side of the wall, Eric Williamson, our graphics guy, in his boxers on his couch at home, Justin Spiro from the Spiro Avenue Studios. We will see you in a few days. Thank you for watching.